And just like that, there seems to be a slight disconnect between what I'm seeing on my screen and what should be going out. Hello, everybody. An absolute packed show today. So no time to jingle jangle, no time to do nothing except crack on. You know him, you love him. Let's go to New Malden and bring in Mr. Neil Longy Long. I think the bandwidth has suddenly gone absolutely raving, man. I can't see what that is because of the green screen, my friend.
What's the matter? Have you never seen a knitted Terry's chocolate orange before?
Jesus Christ, no, I haven't. Right, let's crack on straight away because he's sitting. He looks like he's either in a tank or a car or something like that. I'm going to bring him on. Can you hear
Yes,
me
sir.
live? By the way, I shouldn't be doing this in the middle of a show, but
You're
I
coming
get
through
a,
loud and clear. We
I've
we
got a
can hear you.
phenomenal lag here because there's so many people up on the bandwidth. That's exactly what's happening. I can tell. Let's say hello to Robert Van Buren. Hello to
And
you.
Julie Voice, hello to you, lovely Julie.
A lovely Julie Voice out in Houston, Texas. Right, let's get on with it. Right. David Wimble.
David
Good
Wimble,
morning. Good
as I live
afternoon,
and
both of
breathe.
you.
Right, David, why are you here, fella?
I'm just here very quickly to tell you what I'm up to on Saturday, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking the van that I'm sat in at the moment
It's
over to
nice.
the Ukrainian border, filled up with first aid supplies, along with some friends who are taking two four-wheel drive all-terrain ambulances that we're donating to the cause.
Wow.
Right. And this has all been donated by people in your area because I wanted to give you a quick time to let you talk about it as we've known each other for years.
Yeah. I know you've got a very busy show, but basically, as you remember, we had Victoria on in the early days of the conflict. I've worked with lots of Ukrainians. Over the last 9 months, we've sent four 40-foot container load lorries over with
Wow.
plus two other lorries, smaller lorries. And my friend just said, we've got these ambulances we want to take out there, but the problem is we could do with taking out some supplies as well. And the medics over there have actually sent lists of things that they are struggling to get from Poland. So it's not like we're taking blankets and all the things that people have donated in the past, because it's easier to donate money for those things and they can be bought in Poland far cheaper than you can export them over there. But he said originally, could he borrow my van? And I said, well, if you're going to take my van, I might as well come and drive it for you. So I put out an appeal to raise some money to help cover the costs. It costs about £1,000 to go over there with the ferry and the fuel. It's 1,300 miles there, 1,300 miles back, and about 200.
The trick is, David, to get back. Obviously, that would be the trick.
Yeah,
and of course, David, at least the good thing is, at least it's not freezing cold.
Well, if you think it's cold here, it's very cold there.
Precisely. That's
Last
my
night, I
point.
think it was about -15 in Poland. But the roads are pretty clear because, unlike us, the countries don't come to a grinding stop.
No, because this
and we have
country is
to
finished.
sprint.
That's why we can't deal with anything. It's pathetic. Get half an inch of snow somewhere and the world stops. If it's in Britain, I don't even know how you get to Ukraine. Just very quickly, how do you actually physically get there?
I'll tell you how I'm going to get there. I'm going to follow the two cars in front of me.
Yes, very wise. All right, so tell me how they're going to get to Ukraine.
Well, they've done this trip nearly every month. They've taken about 30 ambulances over there over the last 9 months. So basically, we're going from Dover to Dunkirk, and then not Dunkirk, Calais, sorry. And then we're literally going through France, Belgium, up through Germany, into Poland. We're stopping off halfway at.
Well, you need a wee. You'll need a wee if you're going to go. I mean, you got to get it.
Well, I'm going on my own because the reason I'm going in the van is once we take the two ambulances, I'm bringing the two of them back with me because previously they've flown back. But I said, well, we'd take the van.
How are you going to bring two ambulances back on your own?
No, the two drivers of the ambulances.
Oh, the drivers of the. Okay, that makes complete sense. Okay. Stupid question, but very quick. Where did you get the ambulances from?
They bought them at auctions and private sales of Range Rovers and things like that. One's a Hilux ambulance that's been kitted out. Most of it's, nearly all of it's been donated. So,
and last question. Do they think they're still going to win this?
They will never give up. Would you give up your home?
Well, I may have to. Well, no, I wouldn't. Of course not. No, of course I
No,
wouldn't.
we're all 100% behind the Ukrainians, and it's been my
was
pledge to support them.
Fair play to you. I heard there was fresh airstrikes as well in Kyiv today, so all very much needed. Well done, David. That's absolutely phenomenal, mate.
Yes, it's well done, you. I'm not going to go into the channel crossing thing because that's just a rabbit hole. I haven't got time to go down. But you live on the coast, and unlike all the liberal elite who live in London and the metropolitan areas and sit there clutching their pearls, you see it every single
Yep.
day where you live. One day we'll get you on the show just
Yeah.
to talk about that, because
Okay.
what you get fed in the media and what the truth is, believe me, there is a disconnect there, like the Grand Canyon. It's such a huge disconnect. And David Wimble lives there and sees it and gets called out nearly every single day. We never get told
4
that
o'clock this morning it was, yeah.
because it doesn't fit
Anyway,
the narrative. Doesn't fit the
Happy
narrative.
Christmas to all of your listeners.
Thank you.
I will put a little link on your Facebook page in a minute if anybody would like to help donate with the cost of going out there, but that's not why I'm on here. Just wanted to thank you and Neil and Phil for all the good work you're doing, and thank you for letting us share on Deluxe Radio.
Yeah, please do. I'd like to make a donation, actually, definitely. So I'll be following that link at 1 o'clock.
Bless you, David. Safe journey. Thanks for everything
Thanks
you
for
do.
making a little bit of time for me.
Oh, don't be daft. You take care now. Safe journey. Please drive safely. Right, let's crack on. He's sitting there patiently. It is Tim Hemrose.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, good morning.
How are you? Well, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm fine, thanks. Nice to see you.
Well, we've never met before, but
we haven't.
No, we never have. Tell us all about yourself, Tim.
Well, I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, but it's when I was very young in London, North London, where I grew up, I did a lot of music, but then I went off to medical school and basically gave up music for 30 odd years, believe it or not. When I was young, I played the saxophone and the flute to a pretty good standard, but then I went off to medical school, did a little bit for a while, but basically just became a consultant surgeon and a university professor, and just that was my whole life, really. It has been for many, many years, but I've always wanted to sing and write music, you know.
Why? Can I tell you something? I made a huge mistake of going into the music industry.
Right.
In a managerial, it destroyed me mentally, it destroyed me financially. It was the worst experience of my entire working life. I won't have anything to do with the music industry. I won't even have music played on the radio station, ever. I loathe it. Absolutely loathe it. It destroyed me in so many ways. I've never met in one industry so many truly revolting people ever. And there you are, a consultant surgeon doing wonderful things at a very senior level. Why?
For the joy of it, maybe.
Deal?
Yeah, that's it. You see, I mean, I still am a consultant surgeon, and I've stopped. I don't operate now. I retired from the NHS last year, and I still work and I still teach, and I'm still doing a lot of academic work. But I've always had this thing that, I know this may sound a bit strange to you guys, but I didn't just want to be a surgeon. I've always wanted to do something creative, and I've had these songs going around my head every time I go on a flight or a long drive, and I've traveled an awful lot. I've always had a song going around my head. I always hear tunes, I always hear songs.
That is your muse, sir, and it's begging to be heard. I mean, I'm sorry that, Russ, you met so many awful people, and I don't disbelieve you.
I mean, they were
doing it for the joy of it. This is something entirely different, in my opinion.
It is.
And they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, look at Harry Hill used to be a surgeon, didn't he?
He was. I think he was a surgeon. He's certainly a medic.
And of course, Patch Adams.
And I write about my experiences, you know, when I write. And I love it. It's bring a whole new, you know, singing, and it's a whole new. I guess
my problem is, Tim,
thrill. Really,
I guess my whole thing with it, I understand wanting to do stuff which is burning you up inside because you want to be creative. But for someone who has no medical background, the thought of being a surgeon with the skill and the expertise and the magnificence that involves, and the way that you're helping so many people compared to, you know, singing a song, it's
No, I don't.
just seems
Russ, I
like
love you,
chalk and
man, but I don't
cheese.
agree.
I,
You get a song from your creative muse, and you put it out there to people. That can
Mm.
have a healing effect. It's proven
no,
scientifically.
but
Kind of,
listen.
not as much as when Tim was operating.
I had a fantastic career, and I did, complex nasal reconstructive surgery, and I got to a certain level, and in a big university teaching hospital, and it was fantastic, and I loved it. And
Complex
I did,
nasal reconstructive surgery. Goodness me.
yeah, that's what I specialised in. Yeah.
You probably did meet a few people from the music industry. Joke, sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it was my passion, and I was dedicated, and I loved it, and it was fantastic. And I did thousands of operations, and but you have to stop sometime. I'm 60 years of age. I always, that I could have carried on for a few more years, but I just felt I succession planned in that I've taught someone to take over from me who's brilliant. He's a fantastic young surgeon. And I just want a new challenge and want to do something different. And
it's something that's been burning at you for a while.
It has been burning. Oh, it has.
It's waiting. And I think if you didn't follow it, I think there would be something missing. And I'm not saying that you're not academically brilliant and the most wonderful skilled professional, not for 1 minute, but you kind of need both, maybe.
Yeah, I think you have it's a bit corny, and my songs are about this. I have a dream. I always wanted to be a surgeon, and I made it as a surgeon, but I always wanted to be a musician. That was always my dream, and I've come to it pretty late, but now
I guess my going in
position,
Tim, is that surgeons are so skilled and so rare and so important, and there's 800,000 gazillion musicians out there, from the brilliant to the absolutely abysmally terrible. So I guess that, I look up to people like yourself wearing your surgical hat, and I get that you want to do it personally.
I haven't given up. I didn't stop doing surgery in my 30s. I'm 60, nearly 61 years of age. So I did surgery for many, many years. And, it was always my intention, even though I considered doing music earlier, I just really did, as do lots of people, not just me, by the way, but I did dedicate myself to being a surgeon. But then I decided to pursue a new challenge, and I'm doing my best at that. So it's
another really interesting angle, Tim, is that there's an awful lot of scientific evidence that people who listen to music or do creative, anything vaguely creative, it can improve the healing time. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that someone that you did do an operation on could hear one of your songs, and it could improve. Who knows? Their healing time. It's science based that they've proved it. Things like music, anything creative.
Yeah, I think it's a personal thing. It's just a personal thing, an ambition that I have, something I want to pursue. If it's any good or not, I don't know. I know I can write a tune. I know I can sing, and it's been a challenge. One day I was in an operating theatre as Professor. My surgical name, which is different to Camrose. It's a new persona, Camrose. And the next time I'm in an operating theatre with, a producer telling me, do it again, Tim. It's a bit flat, and I'm with musicians, and it's been a real challenge, and it's been quite a ride, to be honest. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
What sort of style are you embracing?
Well, it's all a bit retro. It's I guess it's the kind of stuff I grew up listening to when I was a lad, which is sort of Billy Joel, Elton John. I grew up around the corner from Elton John in North London. Yeah. I was in Harrow. A lot of Springsteen. I was a Springsteen nut when I was young.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I still am, really. He's the guy I was listening to Springsteen before he was famous.
He's got a good new album out at the moment.
I love it. I really love it. I'm going to try and write some soul stuff. I think his new stuff's fantastic.
What do you then do with the music? Do you intend to publish it?
I've recorded an album. I've recorded an album. I suppose it's in my nature, really. I started off just singing and set up a little home studio, and it became pretty clear to me pretty quickly that although I can play the piano, I'm not a good enough pianist to the standard I want my stuff to be recorded.
Right.
And although you can do an awful lot yourself in a home studio, as I'm sure you guys know, I was getting frustrated, and I thought, listen, if I'm going to do this, do it properly. So I found a brilliant young producer in Manchester, a place called A-Star Studios, a guy called Andrew Ross, who's just great, a brilliant musician and a really creative guy. And I worked with him. I worked with some top-class session musicians, really good professionals who spend their time playing with some very well-known people.
Do you have a vocal coach?
I did. Funnily enough, I did to start with, because the first time I recorded myself singing, it was awful. And I did have some lessons with a really great coach. And that was one of those moments that I'll never forget. You know, I was sort of singing and mumbling along. And she said, "Oh, for God's sake, Tim, sing like you mean it. You know, let's have a bit of passion here. This is
if you want the best vocal coach in the UK, let me know. He's absolutely sensationally good."
So I've recorded an album. Yeah. Yeah.
And what do you do? I'm just kind of curious. I get that you want to do it for your own personal mental health or your own personal feelings.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Well, I've recorded this album, which is out there.
But when you say out there, where is it? On Spotify?
It's on Spotify. It's on Spotify.
Yeah, I was going to ask where we could find it.
Yeah, it's called Half of My Life, which is, you know, meaningful because it's taken me half of my life to do it.
You know,
so that's
being a writer, of course, I'm immediately thinking, what's he going to do? So the first track should be The First Cut is the Deepest, P.P. Arnold cover.
Well,
Every Beat of My Heart. Then you should cover Motley Crue, Kickstart My Heart. I'm just thinking of every surgical thing that you could possibly do.
Well, it's all my own stuff, no covers, all original, and 12 tracks. And so that's there. And I've done some live videos at the Band on the Wall Club in Manchester, the iconic music venue in Manchester, which was great. And now I'm gonna do some live work. I think I'm going to start locally and do just some open mic stuff, go and play the piano and sing my songs to anyone will come and listen. And eventually, who knows, going to record some more music. I'm not, you know, I'll just go where it takes me. You know, if people are interested and like my music, great. I've got 1,000 people following me on Spotify now, and that's not all family and friends. There's some other people.
It's good. It's good for you. Well, why not? Why not?
I'm ambitious. I can't pretend I'm not. You know, I'm regarding this as a job. You know, I'm not sort of just. It's not a little hobby that I'm doing.
No, that's great.
You know, I'm not like that. It's not in my.
The money's in the publishing. Really. If you want it as a job, the money's in the publishing.
Yeah, I'm not. I get. You know, I'm not going to make money. I don't think, and it's really not about making money. It'd be fantastic if I became a global superstar, but that's not going to happen. But it's really about the creative process and fulfilling my dream and challenging myself.
Well, that's important.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
That's important.
But I haven't given up doing my mate. You know, I'm still seeing patients. I'm still teaching. You know, I'm still working as a consultant surgeon.
Is your heart still in that?
Yes. If it wasn't, I'd stop.
No, that's the key question.
I love teaching. I love teaching and training. That's been my sort of passion throughout my career, and I can still do that. You know, and I've still got people that I'm teaching. It's do a university course, run a university course with a colleague, and so that's great. So I'm still.
It's not just great; it's admirable, and it's the future. Because without people like you teaching, you know. Without
that was
passing on your knowledge and your experience.
I really didn't. I didn't leave the NHS until I was really comfortable that I had succession planned.
Yes,
and I had a guy, you know, people that I had taught, and particularly an individual's taken over my practice who is fantastic, very talented, and very nice. And so, it's good.
I wish you well.
I
wish you well. It's a shark-infested waters, but some people do make it. And the most important thing is that you're happy and that you're enjoying it. And if you do it like that, it'll be fine.
Good
Well,
luck.
thank
Good
you.
luck with everything.
I
So
appreciate
what do
it.
people type in
Thanks.
on Spotify to find you? Type in Tim Camrose, yeah?
Yeah, Tim Camrose. Tim Camrose. I'm on Spotify. Album's called Half of My Life. If you put in Tim Camrose music, I've got a website, and you can see the live work, and people can see if they like it. What's an
Brilliant.
old
Can I ask a
bless
quick
you.
question before you
an
go?
old surgeon singing? Hi, yeah.
I'll ask a quick question. It's a medical question. I had a cold and my smell and taste went, and it never came back 4 years ago. What can I
Right.
do about it?
I'm afraid 4 years ago, there's very little you can do, probably.
Oh, bomb.
But I would go and see a specialist. I would go and see a specialist and have an assessment, and because there may be things, but at 4 years, if you were saying 4 weeks, 4 months, I'd be more optimistic. But at 4 years, but you should see someone, Neil. You should go and see someone.
I mean, I've
And,
seen the ENT people, and I'm
have
waiting
you?
for some
Okay,
results.
right. That's important because you may need some investigations and things like that. But yeah, I can't.
Before you go, Tim, loads of lovely comments coming in from all over the world. Mary G. Williams, who is in Kentucky, if I remember correctly. Good on you, Dr. Tim, for pursuing something you love during and after putting in your time in a high-stress occupation. Absolutely.
It's
So
very
many
kind.
abandon their dreams for various reasons. Yeah. Julie Voice is in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
I'm in awe of people who can sing. Not a talent I possess, unfortunately. Elizabeth Green is in New York City.
Oh.
Huge American following, which is fabulous.
Well, interestingly, I worked in the States. I trained in Chicago, did some training in Chicago. And one of my first song on the album is called This Is Chicago, which is about my first night in Chicago as a young guy pitched up in Chicago thinking I was,
the bee's knees.
Yeah. And that was
finding
quite a
out
tough.
Finding out within 30 minutes you weren't.
Finding out it is pretty cold in Chicago. And that was fantastic.
You've never been. God almighty.
I love it's cold. But two of my songs, one of my songs about New York City, one of my back to New York City. So I've got a real affinity with the US. So it's nice that people in the States are.
Yeah, Elizabeth Green, as I was saying, she's in Manhattan. I'm taking singing lessons. I love it. Singing is very therapeutic. Yeah, the neighbors are disagreeing, Elizabeth. I've got to be honest with you. And Asa Don Brown, who's in the northeastern United States. Wow. Who'd have dreamed when we started this? He says, Neil Long, you're absolutely correct. Oh, I was liking you so much. There's been all sorts of research that's verified that music has mental health benefit. Oh, I don't doubt about that.
And physical as well. And physical.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
And we end with this, just to bring the circle complete. Mary G. Williams says, I went to university in Chicago. There you are.
Okay, well, she can listen to my song, This Is Chicago, which is, she'll recognize it. It's all about places in Chicago. And there's a video as well, actually, which is all set in Chicago. Lots of pictures I took myself. So she may enjoy that.
Really. I'm so thick, Tim. I had to go to Chicago on business many, many years ago when I was a kid. Right. And I'd always heard about Lake Michigan. So I figured it was like, such an idiot. I figured it was like the Serpentine.
Okay.
I thought, that's, I'm a London boy. So, think of the word lake, I think the Serpentine. So I go down. I've got a bit of time to kill between meetings and I go down. It's like looking at the Atlantic Ocean.
It feels coastal, isn't it?
It's complete.
It's got beaches, it feels like a coastal city.
Gigantic.
Yeah, it is.
On the map, you just think, it's right in the middle of America. Yeah. Wow, you go there. Boy, oh boy. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with everything you do.
Thanks very much.
I hope you're a blazing success. Wouldn't that be a fantastic thing at nearly 61?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, boom, you have a whole new renaissance. That'd be great.
I appreciate it. It's very nice to talk to you. Yeah.
Good luck to you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, Neil. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Good, charming man. Very charming fellow. I'm in awe of surgeons and folks like that. I'm not in awe of too bruised and battered. To be a surgeon is fantastic and good for him, and working out a succession as well, making sure that when he left there wasn't a gap. What a wonderful thing to do, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Elizabeth Green, go for it, Tim.
All done properly, but I do think we should always follow that creative muse wherever it leads us, and they're not mutually exclusive.
I think there's a world of difference. I'm going to be very honest here.
You're just a bit bruised and battered, aren't you?
I loathe it. It was disgusting. I've met such vile people in my life. I couldn't even, neither could my business partner at the time, who's a very close friend. We couldn't listen to music for years. I couldn't have the radio on. That's how
Seriously?
badly it fucked me up. Yeah,
Good God.
that's how bad it
Wow.
was. It was disgusting. If you don't know anything about the music industry, it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. It's a sewer. Anyway, what I was going to say is it's lovely following your dream. As long as it's kind of realistic. You can dream as big. I mean, dream as big as you want. Why should anybody not dream big?
Isn't realistic dream a bit of an oxymoron though?
Well, the thing is, if you think you're going to be an international star, like people who go on Britain's Got Talent, all these other ghastly, horrible Cowl shows, the only person they make rich and famous is Cowl, obviously, which I get. And I don't criticize him for it. If I'd have had the idea and the know-how, I would have done exactly the same. And Kimmy Lashmar saying, what, you don't listen to the radio, Jack? I never have the radio on. Ever. 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 I only listen to audio. I only listen to speech. I never listen to music unless it's music that I really, really like. And then I'll have it very, very loud if I'm walking the dog. And my guru, oh, jeez, listen, God. My guru said, be realistic. Yeah, right. Okay. Sorry. Just not in the mood for gurus. I mean, Jesus. Sorry, Elizabeth. As interesting and fascinating as you are, gurus, please spare me. So Neil, thank you for covering on Monday. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. We had a lovely show. A lovely couple of guests.
People to meet. It was interesting. I was reunited with Mr. Tarrant and Pat Sharp and the gang all around the Capital Breakfast Show. We hadn't seen each other in a while, thanks to COVID.
How are they all doing?
Everyone's great. Everyone's fine. But I'm obviously a lot older than when we were pulling in 4 million people a day. And it's lovely. I was watching something interesting yesterday. There's a guy I follow a lot on YouTube. His name's Johnny Smith. And Johnny Smith does a thing called the Late Break Show. It's all about cars. I'm a petrol head. And Johnny Smith used to be on all sorts of shows, and he was on Fifth Gear and stuff like that. He was a kind of chippy kid in those days. And he started his own YouTube channel. I followed it since day one, when he was kind of nervous and didn't think it would work. And it's grown into this wonderful thing. And he does big exhibitions now. He's just a really interesting guy. And another guy that I've followed for many, many years is Mike Brewer. Do you remember Wheeler Dealers, that show, Wheeler Dealers?
Vaguely, yeah.
Well, it's huge. It's the #1 show in Discovery, has been for about 20 years. It's international now. It's in 158 different countries, if not more. It's a monster that Mike Brewer created. And Johnny Smith does apart from doing car reviews and stuff, here's my point. He does what's called idol chat. Idol, people he really admires, Jason Plato, etc. And he sat down with a two-parter with Mike Brewer, who is, along with Doug DeMuro and people like that, the most successful in their field. They are huge. Can't tell you. It's like being, Paul McCartney for music. And he was just talking. And so many things about mental health came up that I was not expecting. Mike Brewer, if you don't know him, is a kind of big bloke, geezer sort of fellow, right? And kind of rough, tough, car industry bloke, etc. And several things came out of it, and I'd love to bounce it off you, Neil, while we're waiting for the next guest. One was this, that for many, many years he had an on-air partner, a guy called Ed China, like China, like the country, like the repressive regime. And the show then went to America. It was huge. And Ed decided to leave, and it ended badly. And I was just thinking how lucky I was sitting at lunch on Monday in this little room in a pub with Chris and the gang. It never ended badly with us. We had 20 years on-air relationship, and we're still, and for me, it all finished. When Chris went, it wasn't fun for me anymore. So I left in 2004. All right. So I'd left nearly as long as I was there for 20 years. How lucky to have relationships that last?
I do. I've got a very good working relationship with the girl I present the morning show with on the other radio station. We've worked together for 20 years, and I don't think ever hardly a cross word. Maybe once, just
Really,
nothing.
I was thinking when I was listening to Mike Brewer how it ended badly, and Ed China won't speak to him. Forget it's the car industry. It was a close relationship. They built this thing together, and the other thing that stunned me was the trolling. When he took it to America, he was trolled. He got death threats. When Ed China left, he got death threats.
Yeah, this
and
is part
Mike
of the
was saying,
I don't really
I thought
understand.
he'd just say, yeah, well, sort of. It wasn't like that. There were days he couldn't get out of bed. I was staggered. It's so interesting.
Well, it just shows that mental health is something that
it's everywhere, isn't it? Isn't it? It's absolutely everywhere. But I do realize how blessed I was to have a wonderful working relationship. You know, I was at Capital 20 years, never had a falling out. Never had there was one guy who was a total twat, very unpleasant, who's a huge star now. And he's nothing like he appears. What a horrible guy.
I'd love to know who you're talking about. You'll have to
I'll
tell me
after I'll tell you after the show, and I'll tell you.
Now, our next guest, I know
excited.
of this lady.
I'm overexcited.
I know who this lady is. I know her story.
Why?
I edit a podcast called
Is there anything
Unbroken.
you don't do?
Pretty much not.
Okay, fair
No.
enough.
And I'm 99% sure this is where I met her, because I've edited loads of podcasts. If I've got the wrong one, I'm going to be corrected, but I definitely know who you are, Emma. I think you were a guest.
You see, you're digging yourself in a hole now. Supposing you're wrong.
Then I'm wrong, but I'd still know Emma, so I must have met her somewhere.
Who you are, but you might not.
I think Emma was a guest on Madeline Black's brilliant podcast, Unbroken, Healing Through
God,
Stories.
she's nodding.
She's nodding her head. Right. Yes, I thought so.
Right.
And
Damn, I was so hoping she was going to come and go, the bloody hell are you on about?
Sorry, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Jane Taylor is in the house.
So I edited said podcast, Emma Jane, and listened to your story, and I'm like, oh my God, what an incredible woman. So when I saw that you were our guest today, I was like, yes, I'm really pleased. And I do remember once when I was doing one of those virtual parties over lockdown, I promised you a virtual party for your book launch, and that offer is still on the table if you ever wanted it.
I've still got it there. I've still got
Emma,
it there.
run like hell, for Christ's sake, don't run. Just buy some Pringles and a bottle of Lambrini. There's a party for you.
How are you, Emma?
I'm very well, Neil. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Russ.
Nice to see you.
You definitely. It was through Madeline Black that we met, and obviously we've had contact since. And the party is it's still on my whiteboard, Neil. Long party.
Whiteboard.
You see, I get everywhere, Russ. You see, I've got.
You're on my whiteboard, Neil.
Privilege. You got to be careful.
It's the whiteboard of destiny. Welcome to the show. I'd love to hear.
Destiny.
If you don't mind, I would love just a very brief, if you could, where you were and how you got to where you are today.
Before we dive into the world of Emma Jane Taylor, I just want to say thank you so much for promoting the show. Thank you for being so proactive, because one of the things that bugs the bloody hell out of me is we have hundreds of guests. And to all of them, which I book all myself, and they all get the same instructions and, requests, and they never push it. They're happy to push themselves, but they never reciprocate. And you're one of the few examples. So bless you for that. It is much, much appreciated. Thank you. Over to you, Neil Long of New Malden.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Emma. We're going to talk about the Real Silence magazine. You've got an incredible body of work out in the world now for this incredible and so important cause. And we just want to hear all about it. So really as much of it or as little of your story as you're comfortable sharing, and really what you're doing now.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, both of you. Yeah, so I'm a speaker. I'm a corporate behavior change trainer. I work with mentoring clients all around the world, but I'm also an author, and like you say, I'm an advocate for survivors of child sex abuse, and through that, obviously, I do the motivational speaking. So as a child, I was told I was a failure, the girl going nowhere.
Nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
great training. I had
Who
a
told you?
juvenile.
Emma Jane, who told you that?
My head teacher.
Oh,
So
she
it was.
she can go do one for a start.
Yeah, it was when it was sort of around 15 when I was leaving school. And she basically said, well, I wouldn't have you back for sixth form anyway. You have failed your school. You're not going to go anywhere in life.
Good God.
And that badge, that's like a badge of honor back then, right? But now, what it was for me, because I was living and breathing that kind of chaotic, crazy bad girl life. I had a juvenile delinquent badge slapped on me when I was 13 by my psychiatrist. And I think being labelled at such an early age came with many difficulties. It led me into a life that wasn't desirable. Most people believed I'd be dead or in prison by the time I was 20. Thankfully, neither.
What were you doing that was,
I think it was what I wasn't doing, really. I think, I'd gone through childhood trauma, and I had struggled with communicating what was going on, and that wasn't unusual for it's not unusual for anyone who's gone through trauma. And okay, back in that day, you're talking about in the 80s, no one talked about it.
There wasn't the bloody vocabulary for it back then, was there even?
No, we didn't talk about it. I didn't really know actually what had happened to me until later on in life. And, this is a really interesting part of our development, I think, anyway. Our brains don't fully develop until they're in their late teens, early 20s. So it's not unusual for victims, survivors of child sex abuse or childhood trauma, to actually start understanding in their late teens, early 20s what has happened to them. So I was kind of textbook, really. I got into my 20s, early 20s, and that's when I started my own personal therapy.
Because they might think this is just real life, and the life is like this for everybody, so they wouldn't see it as wrong. They would just see it as normal, which is a terrible tragedy. But is that kind of right?
Yeah, and I guess there's a big question there.
So then at some point you start to question it. And just before I ask the next question, were you acting out because you were in pain and and you didn't have a vocabulary or a constructive way to deal with that pain? Or it's most people who behave badly and have these labels slapped on them, if you scratch the surface and find out there's a reason why they're doing it, and people just tend to judge and condemn, apart from a wonderful few leading lights who actually look a bit deeper and then offer these people the help that they actually need. So was it a kind of acting out of your pain that you didn't know how to process?
Oh yeah, I 100% truly believe it is, and it was, and like I say, it's not unusual. I thought I was the only person in the world who'd gone through this kind of trauma, but I'm not. I'm one in million.
Just to give us some sort of and don't answer if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. But just for everybody watching and listening around the world, can you contextualize what this trauma was?
So it was childhood sexual abuse from the age of 9, and that actually was an isolated incident. And I think
so. That was a one-off.
That was a one-off, actually. And I do kind of wonder now, and I guess this is the $1 million question: if that was all, and I'm not saying all, if that was my first and only traumatic experience, would I be here now? Because I know lots of people who talk to me about the fact they don't want to speak out because so many people have had far worse cases. Well, actually, it doesn't matter
it's not a competition.
How many times
Emma
or
Jane,
how often.
Emma Jane, it's not a competition. It's not the Olympics. You get a gold medal for being the most abused person.
Absolutely, but people really do think that, and I really think I want to change that thought process, because whether it was once, twice, 10 times, 4 years, a lifetime, it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
It should never have happened. Was this
you were a child, right?
I remember when I had my mental health dip a couple of years ago, and it was nowhere near as bad as what happened to you. But
it was relative.
And I remember this little ego voice saying, "Well, look at that person over there. She's had it much worse than you. Pull yourself." And it's just so.
Yeah, but
it's just not the way to deal with it. It's so
unhealthy.
You've
got a cracking headache, and you just think, I want to smash my head against the wall. I've got such a bad headache. If somebody walks by with a broken leg, it doesn't make your headache feel any better. It's not. You're not deciding apples and apples. It's not a ranking.
So when you started to question it, what happened then? Take us
on
your healing journey, as it were.
So after that isolated experience, I was the second experience for me was I was seeing my biological father every other weekend, and my parents are separated. And when I got to around 11, 12, and then this is a bigger story, but obviously just in a snapshot, he told me he never wanted to see me again. So at 11, 12 years old, my hero, this really nice man, my father, my beautiful man, beautiful, significant man in my life, kind of abandoned me and rejected me. And that absolutely toppled me. I mean, I was kind of shaking, crying.
You see, I've got 4 kids. I couldn't imagine anything worse.
No, and I can't. You just can't imagine it. But you know, that then triggered. That was a point where I was kind of triggered by emotionally. I kind of dropped out of life at that point, and then I was a sitting duck for the friend of the family who came along and was my friend. And then at 12 years old, he groomed and sexually abused me for the next 4 years. So, but you know what? And I'm not an unusual case, because in my world, where I come from now in this advocacy role, this story, I hear it every other day. And it is consistent with what I know, what I experienced. And so, so when I got to my late teens, I was taking drugs, I was drinking, I was bunking off school, I had OCD, I had bulimia, I had paranoia, I didn't sleep, I was a nervous freaking wreck. I was addicted to painkillers. I was doing aerosol. I was doing anything I could. And going back to the first point, Neil, when we went to it, yes, that was my coping mechanisms. I didn't know. I was so hurt. I was so broken by what my father had done. I didn't really acknowledge the abuse until later on. And then that was my education. Men treated you badly. And then that's what I was drawn to as a young girl going into relationships.
We make our beliefs and our beliefs make us.
Did you ever reconnect with your father after you did that? Nothing. That was it. That was the end of the story. Wow.
You've been through an incredible healing journey. I imagine you've met some wonderful people along the way. Yes. I look at your work, I look at your posts on LinkedIn. It's amazing sometimes, I don't know what your beliefs are, but somehow sometimes the right person comes into your life at just the right time when you make the step towards that. When you consciously decide you're going to start making that step towards being better, whatever that means, then sometimes it's happened to me, the right person comes along just at the right time.
And sweet of you, Neil. Thank you.
It's like a journey. What? It's like a journey.
Yes. No, really.
So here we are now. Tell us about the work you're doing now. It's obvious why you're so passionate about it. And I can't. Yeah. And the only thing is that what bugs me, we've got a huge bloody problem with this, haven't we? This is big. If you hear this story every day, and I know people personally who I'm certainly not going to name, but it's happened to, and they've, bless their hearts, they're still having difficulties today. And I wouldn't, and I would love to see them get the treatment or the healing where they could truly, truly find their strength.
So when the police walked away in Rotherham,
be the person they were born
it made
to
me
be,
puke. All right, just to underline, when they walked away.
Say that again, Russ.
When the police almost walked away in Rotherham.
Yes, that was awful.
Disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Anyway, there we are. Because just think about just think. Neil, how many people like there are now, thanks to those, I'm not going to say animals because I love animals, subhuman scum, doing that to those kids and getting away with it, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. How many Emma Janes are there now going to be propelled into a life that Emma Jane survived through her own courage and strength, and everybody walked the other way?
Then we hope people find this video and find it inspiring, because that's the point of having conversations like this. Tell us about the work you're doing now, Emma Jane, the wonderful work you're doing now.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's a very serious subject, and I'm being very somber, but I think you're bloody amazing. I really do.
Thank you, Neil.
You're an absolute bloody star. You are. I love you.
Oh, calm down, Neil.
In the best possible way.
Let's just
listen
to Emma Jane's story.
So I think, I think what's important to say is, I went through all these difficulties. I believed I was the person who was going to end up in prison. And then one day I had a light bulb, I had my epiphany, and I decided to turn my life around. I didn't know at that point that I would be a speaker, an author, a presenter on this subject. I just wanted to heal. So I used business.
So
and therapy over the years.
When
to
people
heal.
say they've had an epiphany, it's the road to Damascus moment and all the rest of it. What was it? You sit
Well,
in
I
a
had
coffee
two
bar
actually,
and
Russ.
boom. Yeah, I'm fascinated with that.
I had two. So the first one was I was working in a pub, and one of the regulars came in, and I'm like 19, crazy, drinking, and he comes in. He's like, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I'm like, and I'm actually a dancer by trade as well. So I said, I just want to be a dancer and set up my own dance school. And he absolutely, he nearly fell off his chair laughing. And I said, why are you like, why is that so funny? He said, because you're just the party. I was the party girl. I was, I was the one who was always out. I was the drunk. I was this, that, and the other. And he kind of told me all that. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to be known, remembered. I don't want that to be my legacy, the drunk who just used to party her way through her
drunk
teens
kid
and
in the
20s.
pub. Wonder what happened to her.
Yeah. And so that was one moment. And then the second moment was my stepfather has been in my life all my life. And I was pretty horrible to him in 20s because I was so confused and conflicted by what had happened with my biological father. So my biological father was on a pedestal, and my stepfather was on at the bottom of the rung, and then one day he got ill with heart problems, and he was rushed into hospital, and we thought that was it. And then suddenly the pendulum swung, and I realised that actually this man who I treated appalling for all these years was actually the only man who's loved me and cared for me. And I sat by his bed. I was 19. And I sat by his bed, and I just completely, everything changed. My whole life changed. I then went to Spain and lived and worked in Spain for 3 summers, drank my way through Spain. But I got away, and then everything started changing for me. I was like, right, I need to get help. I need to go and get healed. And then that's sort of where my life journey changed. And like I said, I wasn't intending to speak publicly ever about my journey. Suddenly one day it just felt like the right thing to be doing.
You don't know. We often don't know the how when there's a new path. It's that kind of just having that intention, that desire, and then, if you like, I suppose, following the breadcrumbs. But sometimes the most simple things can wake us up. Like, for example, that bloke laughing in the pub. That was enough just to bring you back to reality, whatever that is.
Yeah, and I say to him now, you know what? I don't see him that often, but occasionally he follows me on social media, and I say, you were one of the people. And he's like, he doesn't even remember having that conversation with me.
No, people often don't. People often don't. Let me ask you this. Did your stepfather, who you'd been so awful to when he'd done his best, did he understand? Did he get why you were doing what you were doing?
Not at the time, because I didn't speak about it, but he does understand it, because obviously he saw the fallout of me at 12 years old, losing my father, and doing what he could actually to help me through that and reconnect me. So he obviously, but that's, and I think this is where it was all complex for me. That was, everyone thought that was my issue, which was horrible in itself. But of course, behind that was the grimy story of child sex abuse. But there was a front of that, which was abandoned by father, emotionally distraught because of that. And that's where that was the hook for everybody at school, everyone who educated me at my school, my family. But of course, it was bigger than that. And now he understands. He's 86 now. He's still alive. He's still with us, and he's still my hero, and I love him dearly. And now he gets it. They get it because I talk openly about it, which has been uncomfortable for for people, and I think this is where it is uncomfortable for families. But I'm driven by my work. I'm driven by my journey, because my journey is not dissimilar to millions of people around the world. Not everybody wants to talk about it. Not everyone wants to be public as a speaker and an advocate and out there and challenging things. And how did it transpire
that you were going to become a speaker? When did that little fork in the road happen?
So again, it was like one of those moments. Someone had headhunted me on LinkedIn, seen what I was doing, and said, "Look, EJ," this was before my story came out. They were like, "EJ, We really love the work that you're doing, because I was in the lifestyle businesses, working with children and adults in the wellbeing, from performing arts to fitness and wellbeing. I'd also been working on That's TV as their wellbeing presenter. And they said, look, EJ, we love what you're doing. Can you share your story? And I said, well, I can, but something just, I didn't feel authentic at that point, because I suddenly felt that, you know, I'd done well in business, I was doing well in life, but behind me was a story that had got me here. Would I be doing this now if I hadn't have had that story? Who knows? But probably not. So I felt like that was my chance to sort of tiptoe into the waters. And they said, look, we've got this magazine. It was called Venus Women Magazine. We'd like to feature you. And I said, well, look, I want also just to dip my toe in the water with the fact that it hadn't been an easy journey to be who I am today. And then they said, well, look, they put some stuff out there. I was very careful about what I wrote, because you are when you first start talking publicly. And then they said, oh, we've got an event at the Medeski football stadium. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And they said, would you come and be a compere of this? Because we're going to put you on the front page of our magazine. I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? There was 400 people at this event. I'd never spoken publicly. And suddenly I'm on this stage. I am shaking like a leaf.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I am going to throw up, if not bore a hole in the floor where I'm shaking. Anyway, so I get through the event. And the next day, my inbox was full of men and women thanking me for sharing my story, because it had inspired them. And then you suddenly think, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. I wanted to give back to at least one person. Now it's given back to me. And I thought that would be it, actually. And then someone saw me there and was like, and then I grew as a speaker. So, you know, I grew as a speaker. I grew with the work that I was doing as an advocate. I went on the, I was the key speaker for the NSPCC Celebrity Chef Gala night last year.
I remember seeing that on Facebook and LinkedIn, all the stuff you've been doing. I mean, you're really making such huge strides, and every time you do that, you are offering a healing branch possibly for millions, even by doing.
And that's why I do it.
Exactly. Somebody could see this show. Someone could go, "Oh, thank God, I'm not the only one." You know, it is possible to feel better.
Right. Here's a question in from Kimmy Lashmore. It's a really very interesting one, and then we'll put up Leslie's version of it as well. Kimmy says this: can I just ask, if someone reveals their history, is it right to hug and feel sorry for them? What's the best thing to immediately say? Interesting question.
That's a really, 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 that's a really good question.
Yeah, we have a fantastic audience who eat this up and really want to get deep dive, you know.
I think, and she's actually said there about sympathy and empathy. I use empathy as one of my first go-tos on any kind of these conversations, because when someone's gone through any trauma, childhood sexual abuse, any bullying, any domestic abuse, for me it's about empathy and consideration for what that person has gone through. I wouldn't automatically go to hug that person, especially someone who's been abused, because that could feel like really.
I don't understand this hugging. I don't understand
totally the
this
wrong
hugging thing. I
when
don't like it at all.
When someone's been, I'm actually quite an emotional, tactile woman naturally. That's just me. But when I was 20, 30 years ago, before I couldn't have had this conversation or someone come up and show, I'd have felt on edge. And I think, the fire in my belly now is much more emotional and kinder. Back then it wasn't, it was dark. And so
it would have seemed like a threat. You would have seemed like a threat if you were running the belief that all men mistreat women. Any man touching you, even in an innocent way.
Well, even women as well. You do start sort of feeling, and I think this is really important. It doesn't matter who it is. If someone's just shared with you that they have been sexually abused as a child, I always think, what can I do? Can I listen? Can I signpost you to a therapist? What can I do to help you? Or do you just want to talk to me? That's quite simply the first sort of go-to conversations I was having. Going to hug someone who's gone through years and years or trauma is yeah, I do understand why people have sympathy for
think
it, but
it's
there's a
intrusive.
bigger understanding of this conversation, and hugging and loving someone because of what they've gone through isn't, in my eyes, appropriate. What is appropriate is having understanding and empathy of that person, the situation, and where they are now.
I don't understand.
And I think it all depends on the context of the situation. If that person wanted to be touched appropriately, of course. Do you know what I mean? It's just reading the context of the situation.
Well, the first time
I get it when you're at a do, right, and you've never met somebody, someone just comes up and kisses you. I don't like that.
No.
It's
all about appropriate context.
And a lot of women I know say, it's just inappropriate. Just shake hands or something. I mean, I don't
You've
like
got
it.
a fist pump now, haven't you?
Well, that's what I do. Why do I want to be hugged by a stranger? I don't. Thanks very much. Not for me.
But actually, yeah, I mean, that's quite interesting, because I see myself as quite a tactile person. So if I saw either of you out, I'd be like,
if I know people, yeah. But if I'm in a do or somewhere, and I'm like, oh, hi, lovely to meet you.
Yes, I do.
No, you
not
just say
strangers.
lovely to meet you. End of. All this hugging crap. It's American nonsense.
And
I think what you've done. Tell us about the magazine, because time is a marching.
Okay.
Yes. The Real Silence magazine.
Let me tell you about the Real Silence magazine. So, guys, I often see media articles written about perpetrators, and I am truly sick of this. Rarely do we hear about the victims left behind, the people struggling to survive from the horrors of what happened to them as innocent children. This has to change. If we look at Maxwell, Epstein, Harris, Savile, they're always in the paper. How can these continually be in the paper? Let's not keep making them more famous. Let's look behind that story. So I decided to stop. I'm moaning about it all the time, and I'm sure you both see that on all my social media. I'm always moaning about it, and I thought, do you know what? Stop moaning about it, EJ. Do something about it, and I did. So the Real Silence was created in 20 years. Because I've really come to realise that what is seriously lacking in the media is accurate commentary on the reality of child sex abuse. And I call it the hidden silence. So my magazine shares the realities of the conversations of child sex abuse from survivors, non-survivors, their families, therapists, lawyers, medical professionals, journalists. Everybody that I could bring in and circulate around this conversation has been vital for the work that I'm doing. It's not a pretty read, but nor is being sexually abused as a child. And whilst the magazine isn't a glossy magazine, I've tried to make it
Is it
readable.
Physical, digital?
It's online, but I have some copies here.
Right. Pass them through the stream. We'll read them now.
So I have some copies here.
Oh, that's good. That's nice.
So
that's very. That's really
I really
nice.
love it. I really love it.
Layout. Could you just open a page at random?
Stuart Anthony, EastEnders, he's in there. Yeah. He shared his story.
Yeah, really cool.
And just before I go, one of the things I want to do is get businesses to get behind this, to get businesses to support this. And, many businesses find that working with conversations such as child sex abuse would expand their marketing opportunity, help them better connect with customers, create important networking. All of this is a great support for this conversation, and it allows.
It can all be part of the healing process, can it?
Yes,
positive
and it's about the growth. I want to get these in. I was at the House of Commons a couple of weeks ago, and I need to be there more often, and I need this to go in there more often, because it's the leaders we need to read this magazine, because that's where the change is going to come from.
Where can it be found?
You go onto my website, emmajanetaylor.com. You'll find everything there under resources.
Excellent.
I'm going to make a quick banner and pop it on the screen.
That's really very good. I wish you all the luck with that magazine, because
thank you, Russ.
It is interesting. We could deep. Oh God, I haven't even got a minute left. It's so upsetting that the media focus on the monsters who perpetrate this, because the people that they affected are mere adjuncts, they're footnotes, and it's the public.
We're obsessed with infamy and hype, aren't we? And I think what you said. What about the people?
What about the people?
Infamy, hype, and sensationalizing. Have I spelt that right, Emma? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And every time that an article goes out in the newspapers, I can guarantee you that there'll be a pile of victims of survivors triggered again because of what they're reading. And
must
no
be.
one thinks about those people, and I do, and I
And
want
you
us
are the
to do more.
voice, and you're the voice, and you
You
know
are-
what you've
you are-
done. You know what you've done.
You are, and I
is-
say this most humbly. You're an absolutely amazing.
I got 4 seconds. I'm going to just sum it up with my favorite New York phrase when I lived there is, money talks and bullshit walks, and you have walked the talk. You've done it. You've gone out there and
Amazing
actually
woman.
made a
Thank
difference.
you, Emma.
Bravo to you. Thank you,
Let me know when
Neil.
you want
I
that
will be
party.
back with Phil on Friday.
Thank you.
God willing. Until then, try and stay out of trouble.